Imagine the sound of fists pounding against your front door at 3 in the morning, so loud it feels like the walls are shaking. Imagine the harsh glare of flashlights cutting through the curtains, blinding you before you're even fully awake. And imagine hearing strange voices outside, barking commands like they had the right to be there. That's how my nightmare began. Only it wasn't a nightmare. It was real. And what those men didn't know was that they had chosen the wrong house, because my father wasn't just any father. He was Delta Force. He had survived war zones, toppled terrorists, and trained his mind and body to remain calm in chaos. And when these fake cops tried to terrorize us, they learned a lesson they would never forget. I remember the chill that crawled down my spine as the banging grew louder. My mom sat up in bed beside me, frozen. My little sister, just 12, whimpered and clutched the blankets like they could somehow shield her. I stumbled toward the window and peeked through the blinds. That A's when I saw them. 4 men in dark clothing with cheap-looking tactical vests and badges that looked like they came from a Halloween store. Their movements were sloppy, their confidence forced, but to someone half awake and terrified, they could almost pass for real cops. Almost. I whispered, "Mom, they're police," my voice trembling, though even as I said it, something in my gut felt wrong. Their uniforms didn't match. Their boots weren't regulation, and real cops don't bang on doors like loan sharks in the middle of the night. Before panic could overwhelm us, Dad appeared. Calm, focused. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the shadows moving outside the window. He didn't raise his voice or show a flicker of fear. He just put a finger to his lips and motioned for us to get down. My father had spent years in places where chaos meant death. To him, this was just another operation. The door suddenly rattled. They were trying to force it open. My mom gasped, covering her mouth. My sister clutched her teddy bear so tight her knuckles turned white. I felt helpless, small, powerless. But Dad? He was already 3 steps ahead. He crouched low, whispering, "They're not cops. Stay down. Don't move until I tell you." His voice was steady, almost cold. That calmness settled me, though my heart still hammered so hard it hurt. The lock snapped and the front door burst open. They stormed in like they owned the place. 4 grown men shouting, flashing fake badges and demanding everyone get out of bed. The leader, a bulky man with a cheap buzz cut and a sneer, yelled, "This is official HOA business. You're violating community rules. We need to inspect the premises." That was the moment everything clicked. This wasn't random. These weren't burglars. They were connected to the so-called neighborhood HOA, a group of bullies who had been trying to force us to comply with rules that weren't even legally binding. My parents had ignored their constant letters and empty threats, and apparently that had made us a target. Now they were escalating. My mom tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Please, you can't just—" The leader cut her off, slamming his fist against the wall. "Shut up and cooperate, or we'll make this harder on you." I felt my blood boil. They were scaring my family, in our home, at 3 in the morning, like we were criminals. But Dad didn't move. He waited, studying every detail. How the fake badges dangled unevenly, how their vests sagged like they didn't fit, how their hands trembled slightly when they gestured with their knockoff flashlights. He saw weakness where we only saw terror. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Now." It happened so fast I almost couldn't process it. Dad stepped out from the shadows, his movements smooth, controlled, lethal. Before the leader could even react, Dad grabbed his wrist, twisted, and the fake badge clattered to the floor. In one fluid motion, he swept the man's legs out from under him and slammed him to the ground with such force the drywall cracked. The others froze for a split second. Just long enough. Dad pivoted, driving his elbow into the gut of the second intruder, who collapsed, gasping for air. The third tried to raise what looked like a baton, but Dad was faster. He caught the man's arm mid-swing, wrenched it behind his back, and shoved him face first into the couch. The last one panicked. His eyes went wide and he bolted for the door, screaming, "Cops! Real cops!" But his escape was cut short by the wail of sirens, because while he'd been dismantling the intruders, Dad had already triggered the silent alarm and called in the real authorities. The timing was cinematic. Red and blue lights flooded the street as squad cars screeched to a halt outside. The fake cops froze, their bravado melting into pure terror. The real officers stormed in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. And there they were, 3 grown men, face down in our living room, pinned by my dad, with their leader groaning on the floor. The real cops didn't take long to see through the lies. The badges were cheap fakes, the uniforms pieced together from online stores, the story about the HOA laughably weak. They were handcuffed within minutes, their arrogance replaced by humiliation. I'll never forget the look on the leader's face as he was hauled away. That sneer was gone. His eyes darted back to Dad, wide with disbelief, like he couldn't comprehend how badly he'd miscalculated. He thought we were easy prey. He thought his fake authority gave him power, but he hadn't accounted for a man who had stared down real enemies in war zones and survived. As the cruisers pulled away, Mom finally exhaled, shaking uncontrollably. My sister buried her face in her teddy bear, sobbing. I stood frozen, replaying the chaos in my mind. And Dad? He just sat down, steady as ever, and said, "Told you, wrong house." That night left scars. For weeks I jumped at every noise. My sister slept with the lights on. My mom checked the locks 3 times before bed. But underneath the fear, there was also something else. Pride. Pride in the man who had kept us safe, who had turned our terror into a moment of justice. It taught me something I carry to this day. Evil often disguises itself in uniforms, in fake power, in bluster and intimidation. But real strength doesn't need to announce itself. Real strength is quiet, patient, and ready to act when it matters most. And those men, they learned the hardest lesson of all. Never mistake fear for weakness and never, ever pick the wrong house. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and tell me in the comments what is the most satisfying revenge or instant karma you've ever seen. And, of course, subscribe for more stories that prove justice always finds a way.